Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. I'm Harper LeBel, and today you're going to be watching Baseball Legends of the Past. And with me are Bob Case and Darrell Evans, two guys that have been in the Major League Baseball world since they were teenagers. And we're going to talk about another guy that was playing when he was a teenager. He was in the Negro Leagues. He played 23 seasons in the Major League Baseball arena with Boston, with Milwaukee, with the Atlanta Braves. He was the only player to have survived all of that 23-year period who was still playing from the Negro Leagues into the Major Leagues, and to be able to sustain that for as long as he did. We're talking about the infamous Hank Aaron. And guys, I'll just start with you, Bob, a guy that you've known, you've had dinner with. You've got a picture of him, and we'll talk about it in just a couple seconds. And Darrell, of course, is a teammate and a guy that knew, especially through some of the great times, some of the controversial moments. We're going to talk about all that, but let's just pay homage now to Henry Louis Aaron, a gentleman that changed baseball in so many different ways and was such a gentle giant and a legend that we can still talk about today with the highest and utmost of respect. Bob, you knew him personally. Talk a little bit about Hank and what he meant to you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and Darrell for doing this, and what an honor to have Darrell Evans, who was such an integral part of Hank Aaron's success and the famous moments of his career. Who was there? Darrell Evans. I mean, which we'll get into. The 700, 7-4, the one he was on first base when Hank broke Babe Ruth's record. One of the most historic things in the history of baseball. So, Darrell, thank you for joining us because, I knew Hank, but you were his teammate and dear friend, and I met him when I was a kid in 1962. Working the visiting clubhouse for Jim Muir of the Dodgers, and he was a gentleman, a sweetheart, a gentle guy. I was so fortunate to get to know him better because I saw how he reacted. Darrell's mother, he was so nice to Darrell's mom. He was nice to Darrell's dad. He was nice to me. He was nice. He was just he's another one of these guys you could never say, I never heard a negative word about him. Never. And I saw him going through that chase when he had Calvin Wardlow was the name of his bodyguard from the Atlanta Police Department, and he carried a gun. And Hank had to have his kids taken to school by Secret Service because his kids' lives were being threatened. And I saw Hank go through all that. And I'm going to tell you, I'll remember this outside the Sheraton Hotel. We were in the hotel, and he walked out to a bus. It was on Wilshire Boulevard and 7th Street, I believe. And Hank stood out there with all this stuff and sat there and signed autographs for an hour. When this is going on. I mean, how many guys would do that? You see these guys today, and Hank and the funniest story ever. And he had a great sense of humor. When Hank Aaron, he always kind of was a quiet, serious guy. But when he had that laugh and that smile, it was one of the greatest smiles I ever saw. And I'm going to tell you something that I saw in San Diego in 1974 or 73. Right around that time, he had bodyguards and people threatening his life. Darrell was in the dugout because he'd made an out, and Hank was up a plate, and he asked for the pine tar rag, and he asked Darrell to hand it to him. And Darrell said, I'll never forget this as long as I live. Darrell said, I don't want to get too close to you, Hank. I'm afraid they might miss. And Hank laughed with that big smile and those white teeth and everything. But that's Hank Aaron. He with all that crap going on, he did not let it bother him. He was the same to everybody. And that's how you can tell a real person when they're the same, when they're on top of the world, below. And think about this. He grew up in Mobile. He was 7 years old. His parents would have him hide under the bed when the Ku Klux Klan was around. Now, do you think that affected how he treated people in his life? No. He was a wonderful human being, and I was honored to know him. He was just the most beautiful person. And Harper, I'm going to show you this picture. It's hilarious. I'm going to let Darrell go on because that's who I want to hear talk about him, who was there with all this stuff going on. But Hank was up in San Francisco, and I had a player up there doing a promotion. I think it was Warren Spahn. And so we go up there, and we call Hank, and Hank says, I'm having breakfast. Come on in my room. So we went up to his room, and there's Hank in the all-time home run hitter in these old flannel pajamas that I wore when I was a kid with the go down to here and the flannel pants that match. And And after I had a cup of coffee there, and I said, Hank, can I get a picture with the all-time home run king in his flannel pajamas? Because nobody else in the world would have that. He said, sure, Bobby. Now, I got to show you this. I have a lot of pictures, but this is one of my favorite ever. That's Hank in his pajamas, and he wrote, best wishes to my pal Bob. Thanks for waking me up. Now, if that isn't a great picture of him in his flannel pajamas. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that.
Wow,
But that just shows
hold
you
that picture up. Hold
huh?
that picture up again. Hold that picture up again. Look at that smile. Look at
That's
how
what I mean.
he lit up the room when he was doing that.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
we didn't. I mean, at first you don't know him, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at this guy's. He was a god, and
Yeah.
look at what he did. He lit up people's
Oh,
lives.
he was the best.
Darrell, let
He
me
was
How
ask you
about
great.
this?
this.
Last
A
thing I want
young
to say.
Hank, real quick, Bob, if you don't mind. Darrell, here's a guy that's 17 years old, right out of high school. Someone sees him, he gets scouted. He plays in the Negro League for a couple of years. I mean, what was it like for you as a teenager? And then knowing what he went through, and then you also have the ability as a young player, you're establishing yourself, and then you're seeing these other 16, 17, 19-year-old kids in training camp getting a chance to shake this man's hand. And you can see the awe and the respect and the honor that they want to give him, especially later on in his career. You got to see that firsthand. What was that transition like for someone like you to be able to see? Not only do I want to get his autograph, but you're his teammate. You're not doing it for the autograph, but you see all these other players that are wearing somebody's uniform, and they all want to get up and shake this man's hand. He was a legend all throughout the time that you knew him. Do you have anything that you could share regarding
Well,
the 17, the 19, the 21-year-old kid that's just getting called up and getting a chance to meet this man? Maybe Willie Mays, obviously DiMaggio. There's other guys, Stan Musial, as you mentioned, Ted Williams. All throughout that man's life, he had to shake somebody's hand for the first time and realize, I am a legend, but I'm not. I'm just a ball player. What was that like for you, Darrell?
well, for him, I don't. Well, he never acted. It was a matter of fact kind of deal. And like you said, that's a great point. When you walked into a room where he was at, and maybe I'll tell my story. I've only played 4 months in the minor leagues. I played 2 years junior college, but I came out and I played 4 months in the minor leagues. And all of a sudden, I'm going to spring training with my favorite team, or my favorite team growing up, the Milwaukee Braves, and now I'm on Atlanta Braves. And my two favorite guys, as you guys know from the past, is Eddie Matthews was my idol because he was a third baseman and all that kind of stuff. And then it was like, and then his partner was the greatest home run hitter, one of the greatest players of all, just like Eddie was. And I was going to get an opportunity. I I'd only played 4 months. I'd never been in a spring training, never done anything like that before. Not even minor league spring training. I had no idea what I was walking into because I was with the Kansas City A's and then got traded, somewhat kind of traded over to the Braves. And so it was brand new, everything to me. So I was still in that mode, like you said, at being an 18-year-old kid that's got was got his baseball cards and would think that everything. I mean, the first thing I wanted to do is not let him see me watching him. It's like this guy's a god. It's like, oh man, but I couldn't wait to see how he acted with other people. And immediately we were talking maybe before. When you go into a room, and especially in sports, Harper and Bob, when you walk into a room, you know immediately who the leader of that team is. You know exactly who the guy is everybody looks up to. Everybody idolizes. They may even be his age or older or experience wise. Yeah, so that was my first thing walking in. Since I was from another organization, I didn't know anybody in the clubhouse at all. There wasn't any guys that I play with in the minor leagues because they were the Braves and I was with Kansas City A's back then. So I didn't know anybody. So I was trying to find a friend or hi, basically. You're like, walk in and go, hey, how you doing, Hank? Now I was like, oh man, I was sitting back in my locker and trying to see the environment, but then watching him because everybody was watching him or his presence was incredible. And seeing him walk around, having fun, laughing and everything else, everybody high fiving, all that kind of stuff, and everybody hugging and all that kind of stuff. And it was always, almost standing in line to do it. Even the guys that have been there for a long time, everybody was like, "Oh man, we got to get this from Hank." So um, I, I think he realized that when he got older. Oh, what a great picture! Yeah, how about that? That's the same feeling I got to have all the time
Yeah. Hey, do
when I
you?
was on base and when I got to home plate. It was like just like I was saying. It was like meeting him for the first time because he all those things included all of us. And you know what it was? It wasn't just his teammates when he was getting to where he got after home run 700. After that, every opponent, every fan, everybody in the world basically all of a sudden he's got press before and after the games from all over the world. And back then, Japan was playing a little bit, but nobody else was playing baseball. So he was drawing all these people in, and he was they Hank was given that gift. God made him the guy to do that because of the person that he was. And so humble and outgoing and just shared with everybody and really didn't. I was fired up today because I was thinking about the he didn't get his due then, um, except from the people that mattered, but the outside people wanted to be in part of it and all that and all. But he didn't get his energy from that. He got his energy from us, and then he gave it
Darrell,
right back to because we got to walk around and go, "That's my buddy." That
yeah,
was nothing better than that, and he meant
my
it.
teammate. Yeah, my teammate. Hey, Darrell, do you remember early on in your career? Was Tommy, his brother Tommy, was he with the club then too, or had he already been through? Tell me a little bit about Tommy.
Absolutely, he was the first. Tommy, his brother, more gregarious, outgoing. I don't know if Hank would go, "Hey, go talk to that guy or say something," but Tommy was that guy. But of course, I didn't know him either. Tommy was a great, great player. He's player of the year in the International League, AAA, and all that kind of stuff. But then when he came to the big leagues, something to say about that being a sibling. You're looked at a little differently, and you're expected to be as good as your brother. But we didn't. But that's what the perception of the press and people are on that kind of stuff. I know that because I know my brother felt that too. But Tommy was the first. Look at that grin. He always had a grin. Tommy
Yeah.
was the first person to come up to me in an environment when I first got in that clubhouse and I didn't know anybody. And he was the first one that came up to me and said, "Hey, you're Evans, huh?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, Mr. Aaron." And he goes, "My name's Tommy."
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to ever hear that again. He goes, "Listen,
Mr.
you know what?
Mr.
When you
Aaron's
get
my
done
dad,
here,"
right?
he
Yeah.
goes, "Eddie wants to see you." Of course, but because of the respect, and we still do that. The people, when you want to give people respect, you call them Mister and Miss, and there's a point to doing that. But in the environment, as you know, especially, everybody wants everybody else to get better because that's the only way we can win. We got a better shot of winning. And it's from the top to the bottom. And I'll never forget when Tommy, came up and kind of told me that, "Hey, listen, when Eddie gets done with his meeting, he wants to see you." And I'm like, "Oh my God," my heart went crazy, of course, and all that kind of stuff. And I was nervous and everything else. And then you look around and go, everybody was watching. So Tommy was that guy. Unfortunately, or fortunately, he played in the big leagues and all that kind of stuff. He probably would have been a star, but we had Orlando Cepeda, a Hall of Famer, was the first baseman. So, as you know, when you come into that situation, they don't just give you anything. Of course, they don't take away from the stars. The stars aren't going anyway. You got to earn your way to even have a chance to go through that. So that was a great lesson. But at the same time, wow, I don't know if he wouldn't have done it that way, I wouldn't have been feel near as comfortable or anything. And then I'm thinking, hey, don't tell Hank. Right away you're going, oh, hey, don't let Hank know I'm nervous or all that kind of stuff. So it was a. I'm glad you brought him up.
Yeah,
Doesn't get
Tommy
talked about
deserves
enough.
he deserves a little praise too. And plus, one of 7 kids, and to have the two brothers being able to be on the same team at the same time,
Oh my God.
very rare.
Well,
And to have the comfort level of that too, right? Yeah, that I got your back and all that, but I'm going to hold you accountable, kid. You know what I mean? Between the two brothers. Go ahead, Darrell.
no, you're exactly right. You know how that works. And I was just thinking this morning about and what it was the thrill it was for his parents, Hank's parents and Tommy's parents, to see him do that and to see what people would just, the whole world went crazy about it, almost all went crazy about this thing, what that was like. I mean, as a parent, and now you got two guys in the big leagues, and all of a sudden you get to enjoy it, jump on the field, and be part of one of the greatest moments at the time. And we'll talk about that maybe. At the time, was one of the greatest moments in the world and history, and made everybody stop and watch. That was the first time they ever showed somebody's at bat, every at bat, no matter what. And then to
Yeah,
be the parents, oh my gosh, what? So that was a joy for all of us to see that too, because that brings it all full circle, like you said. When we go away to play, you wish you could take your parents because, so they can see what's going on, and then they get to be part of that moment. It made all of us feel so fantastic and make us think about the way, got brought up. And always it's like, well, of course they were like that. Their parents were like that, so they were wonderful, wonderful people, giving, uh, great smiles, and gave us a moment in history that is kind of, I think, discounted in a way now.
yeah.
But
Well, it
or
begins a
like you
little
said,
early for Frank. He had a couple years in the Negro Leagues with the Indianapolis Clowns back in the early 1950s. And then other scouts got to watch him play, and he received an offer. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, and if you are, please correct me if I'm wrong. But there was a telegram that had one each a contract that he wanted to sign either between the New York Giants and the Boston Braves. And Hank once said, "I had a Giants contract in my hand, but the Braves offered me $50 a month more." He goes, "That's the only thing that kept me and Willie Mays from being teammates. $50." Any truth to
yeah.
that, Darrell?
Well, I would guess I wasn't there, but yeah, I mean, isn't that ironic? But it wouldn't have been good for them to be together. I mean, they would have then they would have had to win all the time. But see, they didn't think of Hank like that. When you're a young player, when you're a young player, you got to prove yourself. You're not given anything. So they didn't know, like you were saying about that story, it was like, Hank used to uh, bat cross-handed.
Yep.
He had it right-handed and he had his left hand on top
Yep.
for a little bit. I wasn't there. That's what we laugh at, and then we teased him and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, "Yeah, that's how." And then what was he known for? His wrists. So he was teaching himself how to hit, and all those things. This is a wonderful part of it is that people don't realize. It's like, oh well, okay, you just get there, and then how do you get there? Well, you're not given it. You have to work hard. Everybody has their own story, But isn't it a wonderful one that he could bring his brother along? His parents were there when all the accolades and all that kind of stuff, and all of us teammates. Everybody in baseball was proud of him.
Yeah.
Even we hated the Dodgers. Of course, we hated them because they were good, and we had to beat them. And it seemed like we kind of never could get over the top with that, but we were competitive, all that kind of stuff. And then remember when? Well, we're fast forwarding too much, but when he hit 715, he had kind of semi-line drive, so he was running hard at first. He probably knew it was out. I was running from first. I didn't know until I got to second. Then I said, okay, it's out. I can run around the bases and just hurry up and get to home. But you notice that he went by Steve Garvey at first base, and Steve turned around and said something to him. I don't know what he said, but you could tell he said something to him. And then he went to Davy Lopes. Davy Lopes gave him a high five.
Yep.
Bill Russell shook his hand. Ron Say shook his hand. The opponents were so excited for him. We're so excited they were part of it. I mean, Al Downing wasn't real happy he gave up the home run.
No,
But
he
now
wasn't. No.
it's made him not famous, but he was a great pitcher in his own right. But a moment that he can talk about because Hank was so good.
Yeah. Well, Bob, the Willie Mays situation, that seemed a little interesting at first, but do you remember when you first met Hank? You met him on several occasions, but you were working for the Angels predominantly back in the early 60s. What was your first encounter with Hank?
My first encounter was I was around a lot of big leaguers, and he was just like a gentle rock star, unaware of his own fame.
Yeah.
Unaware of how he affected everybody. Just one of the guys in the locker room. He would sit in his locker stall, and he was smoking cigarettes, and he'd smoke a cigarette and laugh and tell jokes with that quiet sense of humor. And he was everybody could kid around with him. He was just one of the guys. I mean, that's what impressed. I learned a long time ago. There's guys around, and I'm not going to mention names, who I can't stand because of their arrogance, because they were effing jerks. That's what you get when you see somebody. You can arguably say Hank's the greatest player of all time. You can argue that with anybody, and the guy hit over 300 and hit 755 home runs. Come on, and this is before steroids, by the way, and all the other crap. And the baseballs then were not like a Titleist golf ball like they are now. So the bottom line is, it was just a different era, and he did it with humility, which is, to me, the guy we're talking to, Darrell Evans. I've known Darrell since he's 15 years old. He's exactly the same today as he was when he was 15. And he was exactly the same way through his whole career, leading the majors in home runs. Hank Aaron and Davey Johnson and Darrell hitting 40. He never changed. And to me, that is the greatest. There's a lot of rock stars out there. We know one in the NBA now I can't stand. There's a lot of those, but they have egos and arrogance. To me, when you're great, like this guy and Hank Aaron, and you have humility, what better thing can you say about somebody? And even Harper, 11 years in the NFL, you could be around him a week and you'd never know he made the high school ping pong team. So that's what I love that kind of stuff, not arrogant. And I was so fortunate. Warren Spahn I managed for after his career, getting him endorsements and stuff. One of the most down-to-earth, Lou Burdett, all these. And Darrell knew all these guys, and played with them and was teammates of them. So it's like, that's what I love. That's what attracts me, is arrogance. Stan Musial was great. So was Ted Williams. So was Mickey Mantle. Even besides his drinking, he was the greatest guy in the world, a sweetheart. So,
speaking of Ted Williams, I got a picture of Hank and Ted and Roberto and Willie and Darrell. You got to see a lot of these guys, some of the superstars, and especially early on in your career, some of the great players acknowledging. Because when Hank hit 3 and then 4 and then 500 home runs, things started to change, right? And I think the echelon of respect kept going up for him in ways where all these other players knew who he was, right? He didn't have to walk up to Ted Williams and say, "Hello, Mr. Williams. It's a pleasure to meet you.
No.
Ted knew who he was, right? And Ted, I'm just saying the respect level of some of the greats. And again, you got to see that firsthand.
Well, that you make a great point because we were all excited to meet Ted Williams, of course,
Yeah,
but he played long time ago, and then you or before we played or were around, but he was the friendliest, nicest. Oh my God, he wanted to talk about fishing more than he did about hitting, which is hard to believe, but he was such a different. Ted was. Or John Glenn was Ted Williams' wingman in jets
yeah.
in the Korean War.
Korean War, yes.
You know, yeah. So I mean, there was again, like you said, such an aura. But you know what? They taught us how to act. They weren't arrogant. They were very friendly. And then it was like, hey, man, how are you going to get better? That's all they were doing. They were trying to make us better. And at the same time, like Hank, you got to be humble if you got what 7 brothers and sisters, and you grew up, and all of a sudden, you got all this adulation for doing something that you're really good at, but they didn't really give him the same kind of due as they gave Mickey and Willie at the time. Hank wasn't even kind of mentioning that till he got to 700 home runs.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden, the whole world discovered him.
Yep.
Baseball people knew him, of course, and all, and of course Milwaukee, and you can look back and go, yeah, he won the World Series, and he was MVP, and all that kind of stuff. But the press and the world didn't. As we know, if you're not in the Northeast, you don't get publicized the way they do there. And so he was, how I guess people compared him to Willie. They still do. Didn't Willie and Hank hit 100 or more than 100 or more home runs than Willie? Well, that's a great. What a great. I think I had that
I had
that
that card
card there.
too. Yeah, that's why I
Look at
pulled
that.
it. Yeah. You kidding me?
Yeah, and what's it say? 673. Yeah. So about that time, look at they were starting to compare him to those guys. Before that, they weren't. Nobody cared about the the Milwaukee Braves. Nobody cared about that. And then when they came to Atlanta, nobody cared about them either. Those
Yeah.
other guys, they played in New York where everything comes out of there. And it's like even now today, they're fired up about this, but even now today, if you go on national TV and you want to see the weather, where the hell do they show you? The Northeast. They don't show any place else in there. So that's what's great about sports is that I guess eventually people believe and watch a game with the Patriots or the Denver Broncos or the Dallas Cowboys. That there's people just like that all over. But see, when you're in the Northeast, your own guys. So that controversy that was kind of became a controversy that he wasn't. Okay, well, he only hits home runs, and and he doesn't. Yeah, look at Willie, look at Babe, look at Joe DiMaggio, look at and it wasn't their fault. I'm just saying that's what it was, and that was the most thrilling part of it. Is all of a sudden everybody recognized him, and we did, of course. And we've been, luckily I played for what 6 years, so I knew him as a friend, a locker mate, a
Yeah.
person that you spend more time with than your family. And watching it, watching it be controversial was the worst BS freaking thing that ever happened. But that it's still controversial.
Hey,
But
Darrell, real quick, remind us, was it 650? Was it 675? Was it 700? When did the comparisons to Babe really become something that was,
I think it
you
was
knew it? When do you think that it became a national situation? I'm thinking it was right
Well,
around 700.
yeah, of course it was because look, hey man, we were basically still we were expansion team. They came from Milwaukee into Atlanta, never really caught on. I tell people, I goes, the day after 7:15, the next day we had less than 5,000 people,
Wow.
which was our typical. I don't
Yeah,
know if we ever. I don't know if we drew 1 million people back then. I'd have to look it up. Didn't seem like it. We didn't have. We had that hardcore fans, of course,
sure.
but we didn't have the national or anybody else. Even though we were always good, and we were in the. I mean, we had some of the best hitting lineups in history, and yet you would think, as along with Hank, but that wasn't happening until it was like, oh. And you know what happened at the time too? When he got to 700, the the commissioner Bowie Kuhn came out. What? Oh man, if he breaks it, I might have to put an asterisk on there because he's got more bats and than Babe did, and that's like just like he tried to do with Roger Maris when real baseball fans could care less. Anybody could care less, but it was trying to find a way to put him down. Would they have treated? I looked back and I go, would they have treated Willie Mays like they did Hank Aaron? What do you think, Bob? Of course not. So they found this small people that wanted to make it not as important as it was to all the baseball fans, all his teammates, all the other teams. We're so proud to be part of that, and yet there was people that didn't want that. It's the wrong guy to give recognition to. So it kind of snuck up on him at 700. And yeah, that was when he started, he had it before every game. Well, like I said, we were in Atlanta. Nobody was there. We had two sports writers. That was it. Once in a while, if the Falcons weren't playing, well, we get headlines. But it was all football place. It was all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, it was like, oh man, he had 200 press from all over the world before the game asking him, "Are you going to hit a home run tonight?" You know,
Yeah.
and after the game, going, if he hit one, it was like, "Oh, what'd you have for breakfast? What are you gonna, what's your routine and stuff?" Well, they didn't even know who he was. A lot of people, of course, sports fans and everybody else kind of knew, but they were all rooting still to this day. They still, I hear this all the time. Well, if this guy would have played longer, he would have done it. And this happened, and it's like, well, that's reality. Yeah, okay. If I'd have played another 20 years, I'd have hit 700 home runs too.
If you
But
had played in Tiger Stadium your whole career, you would have hit 600 home runs.
well, yeah, but you got to play half the games on the road too, Bob. So you know that. But Tiger Stadium, you bring up Tiger Stadium. No, yeah, it was okay. It wasn't even. I mean, Yankee Stadium much shorter. The one now is even much shorter to right field. But yeah, Tiger Stadium was 440 to center, so
Yeah.
you weren't hitting any balls out of center field. Anyway, get back to Hank. That's so the reality of people realizing and going. I think I was asking him, how the hell do you do that? So, but we were,
What a
look,
great picture of what a great picture right there of two
yeah,
greats.
we were in awe.
Leave that up for a while, Harper. What a great
I
picture.
was 25, 26. This was my my third kind of full year. I played 72 all the time, 71. I didn't start out with the team, but I came up and so I was brand new to all this anyway. And then it's like, where's all the people? Where's all the press? Don't people understand what this means to everybody? And then they started, like I said, Japan was playing baseball, but we didn't even know if any other country was playing. But all of a sudden, Japan, man, they had 100 reporters there, and all that kind of stuff. So And so everybody else kind of kicked in. And so people started recognizing what he was doing. He wasn't just like he always said, I'm not going to replace Babe Ruth. Hey, I don't know if I'm going to break the record, but I'm going to try. And that's what we loved about him and that was why, like I said, there's some other guys. I don't think Willie Mays could have, no matter what happened. He was much more in the spotlight and volatile and all that kind of stuff. And, but, the Northeast in particular wanted him to do it. So it was like that was the only time he got. So now Hank's getting publicity. Now everybody's coming to 700. Or at 700, all of a sudden it's like, well, who? Oh, Willie hit another one day. No, it was Hank Aaron. Wasn't Mickey Mantle. Wasn't Willie Mays. Wasn't no. It was Hank. Who? It's almost like who? And he took it. The thing about it is, it's to me one of the amazing things is he didn't. It wasn't that he didn't feel pressure or he saw what was going on, but he didn't bother him. He didn't become, even though he had death threats supposedly and all kinds of them. I don't know how many there were, but whatever. He didn't back off. He didn't go hide like Bob told a story about. We kid him like, hey, don't get too close to us, man. There's somebody, and he'd laugh at it, and it was like, he'd like, hey, you guys, So we would, so we were in part of that the thrill of that every night. I mean, going to work, going to the ballpark, and how many businesses you go to the ballpark where there's millions and millions of people interested about what's going on, and it was because of number 44, who everybody loved. Oh, that's a great picture of Davey there. Is that Davey in the
Yeah.
background? Yeah.
Him and Dusty. Davy's on deck. Dusty's ready to come up to the plate
Yeah,
after him
look at
hitting another
that.
one.
Look at that lineup.
Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, look at that
You mu- you
lineup.
you must have struck out a few
I
few
don't know.
pitches earlier.
No, you know what? I always used to laugh, or I look back now and I go, man, there was times, I was like, no, I'm up there. That's what. Hey, you're up there to freaking do damage. You're supposed to hit the ball at the ballpark every time. But then it became, well, no, I don't want to hit it out of the park. I want to be on base. You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
and oh man, my buddy Dusty. Yeah, we came up at the same time too. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame because his manager, but he was a
Sure.
great, great player too.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and we were young, come up together at the same time, and they slotted us. And then the most people ask me maybe one of the most nervous moments of my life was when I read that lineup card on opening day, and I was hitting third in front of Hank Aaron, and Dusty was hitting fifth on
Is this the
behind Hank.
74, Darrell? Darrell, is this the
No,
74?
this was 70. This was 73. That year
Okay.
opening day was like, well, you're hitting third. Eddie's like, he didn't tell me. He just, people don't know, but I guess, but they used to just put the lineup card on the door as you come in the locker room. You look and see if you're playing or if you're not playing, and whatever, you start doing your stuff. And I remember my parents and all the people are going, "Oh my God, so you're going to be playing every day?" Yeah, probably, because I did pretty good the year before, of course. And Dusty and I were up and coming new. I saw Dusty quite a little while ago, and I go, "Remember Dusty? We were supposed to be the new Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews." I mean, think about it. We were. That's what That's what was like. Oh, these guys. So they were telling us that we were good enough. And of course, and Dusty goes, "Yeah, well, you got closer to what Eddie than I did to Hank." And I go, "No, that wasn't the point. It was like, remember, they put Hank in between us. It was such a thrill, and like you said, coming back to what this guy, how good this guy was, and how he made everybody else better. There was nothing better than to go to work, and you're going to go see what other job can you go, and I'm going to go see and be a teammate and sit and talk to the best player in the world. It was it was so awesome. It's so wonderful. When, like I said, when he got 700, all of a sudden everybody else realized that. It was so surreal, I guess, in a lot of ways, but it made us do our job. My job was, yeah, okay, I'm in scoring position, and I hit 19 the year before, home runs, and I was okay. I was learning, and then all of a sudden we started out, and all of us went crazy. We had two guys 99, David Johnson and Dusty had 99 ribbies. Mike Lum
Yeah.
had 90 ribbies. I had 104. Hank had 99 ribbies. I mean, if you look back and you go, there was never, I don't know. So, the Yankees murderers row, were they better than us? I don't know. They weren't when we were playing, and who was our leader? This guy. Come on, man. You know what? Because, well, we used to when we got close, or he got close, and to hitting the 715, of course. So when he got to 713, which was his 40th home run in 73,
Yep.
he was 39 years old. Nobody talked about that anymore. Oh yeah, well he's been around. He was on 24 All-Star teams. Must have been pretty good. So all of a sudden, people were it was like kind of discovering that, because they weren't coming to the park. They weren't Braves fans. They weren't. They were somebody else's fans, and all of a sudden, this guy, and you're going. So when we got, I'd say Davey Johnson. I don't know. He had 20 home runs a few times with Baltimore. He was a great, great player. Should be in the Hall of Fame too, because manager. But that's pretty cool, man. I played with all these Hall of Fame guys, wasn't it? And I hit third. That I'll never not be proud of that. But so when Davey, I think I told you about that before, Eddie's like, hey, man, we don't hit singles around here. Hit the ball in the ballpark. And Davey kind of went, he wasn't required to do that before, probably didn't know how to do it. But then all of a sudden he had the best guy, Hank, to talk to and watch. And he had a manager that was going, hey, come on, you can do this. So that's what they did for us.
Join him, right? Join him. Hey, why would you want to end up on first base? Go ahead, hit one
Why
out,
not?
right? He give you,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. And then it's like, how did that affect the pitchers that they're going to pitch against us? Kept them up late at night a
yeah,
week before they were going to pitch against us.
yeah,
And then it was
yeah.
like, wow, you go they go on the meetings and go, well, we can't let this guy beat us. Yeah, we can't let this guy beat us either. And we can't let this guy beat us. I mean, I got walked intentionally twice by the Dodgers. Walter Olson intentionally walked me to pitch to Hank. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
laugh,
If
and
Hank,
it's
no,
like
seriously, if Hank had hit
I'm
one the
I'm
night
I'm
before,
I'm
yeah,
I'm looking around, and it's funny because it was George Culver both times, the pitcher for the Dodgers, and he's a buddy. I talked to him, and he always goes, "Oh yeah, what?" He goes, "I thought Alston was crazy. What the hell are you doing? I'm this young kid and stuff. And you want me to pitch to Hank?" So he affected so much. Not only and he affected the players on his team. He affected the pitching staff from all over the league. And he wasn't just a home run hitter.
yeah,
755. You take away 755 home runs, still had 3,000 hits. He
yep,
won 2 batting titles. He won 2 stolen base titles.
yep.
He won several Golden Gloves. And it's like, well, he should have. Wow. How come he didn't win more? Because he had Roberto Clemente and Frank Robinson and all these.
And Bob, you had mentioned earlier, lifetime 305 average. Darrell was in the locker room. What was it like for you as a guy that's all around baseball and knows the history? You You drove Casey Stengel around for a decade. You had Warren Spahn. You said that one of the times that you met Hank, Warren Spahn was downstairs with you that very same day. The history of baseball. Talk a little bit, Bob, about your experience when he hit 700 and lead up to 714. We're gonna stop there, and then Darrell's gonna come in and talk a little bit about that home run before, because that's at the end of the 73 season. So give me your perspective, Bob, just a little bit here about Hank's accomplishments, and then as he's getting closer, and what the overall view was, not just the media, but the baseball world and what they were sensing.
Well, all I can say is
Excuse me for a second. Keep going. I'm sorry.
The world stopped when Hank. It stopped. Even in the 690s, everybody you'd be in a bar. Did Hank hit one today? You'd be in the gas station. Did Hank hit one today? Everywhere you went, it was like the whole world stopped. And it's one of those places, like when they walked on the moon. This is funny. I was drunk both times. When they walked on the moon for the first time, I think it was in 71, I was in a bar, okay? When Hank hit the home run to break, I was at the Night Watch in Pasadena, a bar that we used to hang out in. And it's one of those places you remember exactly where you were. And the icing on the cake for me, Hank Aaron was probably my number one. Steve Bilko, who was a big first baseman that played in the minor leagues and the big leagues for a while, was my idol as a kid, and Hank Aaron. They were the only two idols I really had in baseball. I loved Hank. I saw Hank Aaron. Now think about this. I'm 12 years old, and Hank Aaron is I'm 50. I was 9 years old when he broke into the big leagues, and I got to know him as a big league player when I'm a man and hang out with him. So what a not. And then the icing on the cake is my best friend in the world is sharing the limelight with him as he's doing this historic thing. I mean, it's a historic thing. So it's like, and to see Darrell as a part of it, and Darrell's family and his mom and dad is a part of all this, and all his fans and friends. So I felt like I was like on the inside of this whole thing. And thanks to Darrell and all the friends I got to meet all of his teammates, and most of them are really good friends of mine. I managed the Negro brothers. I've had all these guys doing stuff, and they're all great guys. And it was Darrell, but that was really, to me, the icing. I'm sitting in Darrell's favorite bar, the Night Watch, in Pasadena, watching him on first base when Hank Aaron breaks to me, it's the biggest moment in baseball history to me today. And this other home run record to me is like kissing your sister, because we all know it was tainted. To me, Hank Aaron will always be the home run king to me. Okay.
Well, let's go to 714, the one that ties it all up. There's several that lead up to it. Was there any? I mean, you're on first base on a lot of these, or sometimes you're standing on second, Darrell. You've got the bird's eye view. Sometimes if you're standing on second, you can see the finger. You can see it's going to be a fastball low and away. And dude, you're in trouble throwing that pitch. And he does, right? He hits it out. So many times you get to see stuff like that. But to give just a little perspective of 705, maybe 712. And then obviously you end the season in Cincinnati. It's cold, but it's sunny and bright, and you can't hardly tell. I've got a couple pictures. We'll get in that. But lead up to it, Darrell, if you don't mind, from 700 right up to 714. Is there anything in particular you remember during that time?
Well, let me go back briefly to what I was talking about with Davey and all that kind of stuff, because this is Hank. So he's going to break Babe Ruth's record, or he's going to, well, unless he gets hurt, everybody knows. And you try to figure out, okay, how is this going to work and everything. And of course, like you said, at the time, Davey and I found out at like 700 too, was like, no, there's never been a team that's had three teammates hit 40 home runs in the same or more in the same season. Well, we were a little farther along than Hank was at the time. We were getting in our 30s, but virgin territory for both of us. We'd never done that before, but he was inspiring us to do it, to keep up. So we, watching him and stuff, he didn't show any of the pressure. We kind of knew what was going on, and it was used against him. It was used You know, it's like, oh wow, the first black guy gonna do it in the South, and it's like, the frick, nobody cared about that except the damn press. You know, and except see the civil riot and lynchings going on all the time. It's like freaking bullshit. People would come into town in Atlanta, oh man, and they'd leave town and go, oh, Atlanta sucked. You never left a hotel room. How do you know what it was going on at the time? Hank was he was the inspiration for everybody, but yet it was like because he's black, and it had nothing to do with that for anybody except the damn people that wrote those letters that made threats and stuff, like it is now. Very few people who don't care about. And look what they did. That was supposed to happen, and what happened? They let people on the field. I thought it was supposed to be, all threatening and everything. They didn't give a shit. I mean, well, whatever. They didn't. They couldn't have. Well, they didn't. Hank had a bodyguard. We used to kid him all the time too. What was his name again?
Calvin Wardlow.
Calvin, great guy and all that stuff. But all of a sudden, Hank's not going on the buses with us. To the airport. He had to gun him, but maybe not. We'd meet him everywhere else. He'd be at the ballpark or come in by himself. Which is he loved being around. Of course, this is what he loved too. He wanted to be around all of us. So we all of a sudden he's got Calvin around, and we're like, "Who's that guy?" Because usually he doesn't have anybody in. You bring friends or family in the clubhouse briefly. They're not in there all the time. All of a sudden, Calvin's around. We're like, and he wasn't very big. I always remember he wasn't. So it was like, oh, I think that's Hank's bodyguard. It was like that little guy. And then I don't know who it was said,
Did we lose you, Darrell? Bob, are you with me?
Yes.
Go ahead and fill in for a second while we get Darrell back.
Calvin Wardlow, he was saying he's a little guy, but his gun wasn't little. He had a gun that was ready to blow anybody away, and he became one of Hank's best friends, Calvin Wardlow, a great guy. And I want to tell you this: I want to say what a great Hank's wife Billy, who he married later, but what a wonderful wife she was to Hank too. And I think she really helped him in so many areas, just so many areas of, she was a classy lady. She was an announcer in Atlanta, and Hank married her, and they were so happy. And Hank always wanted to make her look good, and she always wanted to make Hank look good. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful relationship, which I really think helped Hank the second half of his life. They always say behind every successful man there's a good woman, and she was right there through all that stuff. And but Calvin Wardlow, we used to kid about him all the time too, but he was the Atlanta Police Department, and he and Hank became closest of friends because he was around them at all those times. But like I said before earlier in the podcast, Hank Aaron was out signing autographs at the Sheraton West right before the record, so he wasn't that afraid of people of them killing him, But Billy Acree was the equipment manager for the Braves, and I saw some of the letters, and Dick Cecil was part of the Braves front office, and the letters were you couldn't believe it, but most of them were from people that couldn't spell. So they were from people that lived in caves in the South somewhere, these, like that movie,
Deliverance, right, Bob?
Yeah, they were that kind of people. They were not educated people, but the letters were horrible. And but the good thing is that most of them couldn't even spell. But they had boxes of them. I don't know if they still have those around, but I think Billy Acree, the equipment guy, saved the boxes of the letters. And Dick Cecil, but it's a good thing the public never saw them because they were just horrible. But Hank just looked at them and didn't affect him at all. That's the great thing about his personality. These things didn't affect him, So it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And I'm so glad that I was fortunate enough to be around it and be a part of it and be around Hank all those years,
Yeah. Yeah. The pressure from one, the press, the baseball media, I guess you could
Oh,
say, and then the civilization around that didn't want him to surpass Babe at all. Just an amazing and immense time of great sacrifice, and all the things that you said were a part of this. But he's still getting close. 7-10,
oh yeah,
7-13,
absolutely.
7-14, and he ties, and we have a few pictures of this, and he ends the season in Cincinnati. So when Darrell's able to join us again, he's having some computer issues right now. He's got to reboot. But that whole off season, is there anything else? I mean, he's right there. He's
Oh,
tied it,
absolutely.
and the whole off season is basically, when's he going to get it, and then we can move on with the season. I attach it just a little bit, Bob, if you don't mind me saying so. A little bit later on, when Cal Ripken was getting ready to tie Lou Gehrig's record, and as he was approaching it, he was 50 games and 25 games, and then he was right there at the cusp, and then ESPN was going to follow him every step of the way. What I remember is baseball was ready to go on strike, and the players were gathered together on numerous occasions to say, what do you want to do? And every one of them stopped their personal specific grievances and said, how is this going to affect Cal? We didn't want that record to not go unbroken. What can we do to assist it rather than put an asterisk next to it because of our discrepancies with our workplace environment? The way that baseball came together to support him, and as Darrell had mentioned a little bit earlier, the way that the Dodgers congratulated him as he was going around the bases. Now, they didn't want to be the ones. I don't know if they were playing St. Louis or San Francisco next. It doesn't matter. But he did it against the Dodger organization. And they were as classy as could be, in my opinion, regarding that, to stop and go, hey, we're a part of baseball history. We've had Joe Ferguson on the show, Bob. We talked about this with Joe. And Joe had a great moment later on in that World Series from the same year where he made an outstanding throw from right center field to throw it. I think it was Joe Rudy. It might have been Sal Bando in a World Series. But Joe was behind the plate when Hank hits the home run, and we'll get some pictures to confirm that. And for a moment, he was a fan, right? Everybody would just stop to see what Frank was going to do, just see what Hank was going to do. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think they were all proud to be a part of it. But, Harper, you're talking about those records now. As I told you, I barely got out of high school, but I know baseball. And I'm going to tell you this. I know all the records. 56-game hitting streak, Joe DiMaggio. Lou Gehrig's record. You can go on and on and on with every record in baseball. Nolan Ryan's record for strikeouts, which will never be broken and everything. But the biggest record of all was Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth, in my opinion. That's my opinion because, the other records are great, but they weren't Babe Ruth and they weren't home runs, which is the ultimate thing you can do in baseball. And for Nolan Ryan's, a strikeout, if you're a pitcher, is probably the top thing you can do. And that record is unbelievable, an untouchable record. But no, I think the biggest thrill I ever had in my life was watching that record be broken and have my best friend on first base. So how does it get better than that, and watching the whole thing and seeing him, from a young kid watching the 57 World Series, and him on my baseball cards in 1954 and 55 when I was a little boy, to getting to know him as a man and see him as a big league player. That tells you how long he lasted into my adulthood. And, and I have cocktails with him. And I'm going to tell you this one story. I told Darrell knows this story. I'm at the Gerald Ford Golf Tournament. It's down in Palm Springs in 1977. And it was they had all these A-listers, and Hank was there. And I saw Hank, and we talked at the driving range before the golf tournament. And he said, Bobby, I want you to join me at our table for lunch. This is Hank Aaron saying, you want to? And I didn't realize it, but Hank didn't know anybody there. And Hank was kind of a shy guy, and he felt comfortable with people he was familiar with. So, unfortunately, there was no cell phones then because I'd love to have a picture of this. So we sat at this luncheon, and I was on Hank's right. And next to Hank was Frankie Fitzsimmons, the head of the Teamsters Union. And next to Frankie was Howard Cosell. and next to Howard Cosell was George Steinbrenner at that table. And I thought, but Hank had never met any of them, so I think he just wanted me around there because we knew each other, so it was a real honor for me and it was fun. And I will never forget that.
Yeah, anyone would say that table alone, Frank, the highlight would be that even Steinbrenner. Yeah, I sat with Hank Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely.
He didn't sit with Bob Case. He didn't sit with
right.
with Howard Cosell. And Howard would say the same thing. Although Howard would say, no, they sat with me, and I'm teasing
Right.
there.
No,
But yeah, the respect and everything, and a humble guy. Let's go to 7:15, and Darrell will join us shortly. But here's a guy that waits till they get home. April 8th. It's the first game of the 3-game series, and Darrell had mentioned this a little bit earlier. The place is packed, and it should be. He said the next night there were only 5,000 fans for the next game, but for this one, the whole world was there for it. And I remember watching it, and I was watching it in Los Angeles with Dodger coverage. So I'm listening to Vin Scully's broadcast of it for NBC, and just I'm used to Vin's voice and everything like that, and everything was all about it. But give me a perspective. What you remember? Is there anything specific right there at the at bat? Did you really stop what you were doing? And I think the answer for everybody is yes, absolutely. I stopped what I was doing.
People, wherever you were, people were asking what was Hank doing. During that even in the year before, did he hit a home run? Did he hit a home run? And then when it went to 7:14, and the whole world was talking about it. That's all people talked about. People that didn't even know, it went beyond baseball. Non-baseball people were saying, "Is this Hank Aaron guy going to break Babe Ruth's record?" It was just like it was part of Americana. The Babe Ruth record was like, George Washington. You know what I mean? It was like part of American. And to see this, and what really, Darrell will tell you this, which bothered him and bothered me and a lot of people, was that Bowie Kuhn was not there, which is really amazing. Now, if that was, Mickey Mantle going after the record or somebody else, would he have been there? Probably so. So, there was a lot of BS that was not talked about as much as it should have been. But, and it didn't bother Hank at all. He could have cared less. But I'm just telling you, it bothered a lot of people and a lot of his teammates, especially.
Tell me why. I have my perspective, Bob. I mean, here's the commissioner of the league. You got to be there. One of the most historical events to ever take place in the game of baseball, a change of the guard, if you will. You got to be there for that. But I think Bowie's excuse was, or one of the reasons that he said he couldn't do it, well, I can't follow him around and go to every single ball game until he hits it. Well, I kind of get that, but you know what? For something as
come on, everybody knew. He wouldn't have. It would have been done in a couple of games. That's all a bunch of crap. I don't believe that. And he's also the one that said they should put an asterisk on it. Are you kidding me? An asterisk? No, it just the whole thing.
Well, the contact made, I would always tease as a Dodger fan that Al Downing and Joe Ferguson tipped him off. He couldn't have thrown a middle pitch over the plate as good as he did on that one. And Joe may have said, here it comes, Hank. This is going to be, if you can't hit this one out, then something's wrong. Bill Buckner did everything he could in left field to climb the fence and try to keep it from happening. Tom House ends up catching the ball. Tom House, obviously the quarterback whisperer, at one point in his life was a relief pitcher for the Braves. He ends up making the catch and delivering the ball to Hank after he crosses home plate. Just so many cool things about it. But I've got a few of the pictures right here. Obviously, the contact being made. We had one where Dusty was on deck, and Dusty Baker was one of those guys that as a teammate with Darrell and everything. And we've had him on the show for obvious reasons. He knows the historical aspect of it. The game paused for at least 10 minutes afterwards for the celebration. And then Dusty's up at the plate again, right? He was the next batter up.
Well, that's another thing. Think of the guys that came out of that team. Davey Johnson became a great manager. Dusty Baker is arguably a Hall of Fame manager and was a great ball player and a great guy. Everybody loved Dusty. Just a good guy and as smart as a whip, too. Just smart as a whip. He said the other day Reggie Smith was elected into the Dodger Legends last Saturday, I think the 15th. And he said Dusty Baker said Reggie Smith was the second best player I ever played with, and he said Hank Aaron being number one. But
Sure,
that was
absolutely. Yeah.
quite an accolade for Reggie Smith.
Yep. Yeah. Great player, and for obvious reasons, the accolades coming along with him, and the Dodgers will celebrate him, but with a induction into their Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
The hit itself, though, everyone wanted him to do it for obvious reasons.
Well, they used to say when Bobby Thompson hit that home run in 1951, that was referred to as the shot heard around the world.
Around the world, yes.
Well, this one surpassed that one, I can tell you.
Yeah. And the only difference is that even back in the '56 Thompson World or pennant-winning home run, there wasn't a single Dodger fan that wanted to see it done against them. I don't think that was the same with Hank.
Yeah.
You know, in a way, it's kind of like a badge of honor to be the organization that he did get it. Here, Bill Russell, the shortstop for the Dodgers, is in the foreground. You can barely see the way the picture is focused, but as Hank goes around, and Darrell's on first base. That's one of the cool things about it. He knew on contact that the ball was hit hard, and he said to both of us previously that he's running hard to second because he wasn't sure. He hit it hard, but the angle, it wasn't a towering shot, if you will. So he thought, if that bounces off the fence, I better be standing on third or scoring. So he kind of trucked it to second base, but then he realized that the ball was over the fence. You could hear the crowd for obvious reasons. And I wanted to ask Darrell, is it just get out of the way? Is that a part of the moment of this where you just get out of the way? And I would imagine, yes, absolutely. I just want to touch home plate and let Hank do his thing.
Yeah, but Darrell was the first guy to greet him at home plate. There's a lot of pictures of that. Number 11. But you know what I want to tell you about Hank? A lot of his teammates I knew, old Milwaukee Brave guys like Del Crandall and other players, and Eddie Matthews, and personal friends of mine, and Lou Burdett, and a lot of the Atlanta Brave guys. Mike Lum was a client of mine for a while. And anyway, all these guys, they all said the same thing. To know how great Hank was, you had to see him every day. In other words, now think about this. People say, Mays is the greatest five-tool player of all. I disagree. I think Hank's the greatest player. I would take him over Mays. And the only difference is when Hank went out to catch a ball, his hat didn't fall off. The only difference is he didn't have a basket catch in right field for showboating, and the bottom line is Bob Gibson was once asked by Darrell Evans, who would verify this when he comes back on, who would you rather face? I was there when we asked Gibson that. Who would you rather face, Hank or Willie? And Gibson laughed. And he said, all I had to do was throw one behind Willie's head, and I'd strike him out. He said, Hank, you couldn't scare him. He got better. And that's the way he was. Nothing. He had that demeanor, that calm demeanor that never changed. And he played. He was as fast as Mays, but he didn't look like he was running. He would kind of look like he was sauntering after a ball. He led the league in stolen bases. Come on, the guy was a five-tool player. They didn't have the Gold Glove before '57, or won some other ones in right field. But the point being, this guy could do it all, and he didn't concentrate on stealing bases late in his career when he was doing all these home runs. But one of the greatest players, and he's underrated because he wasn't flashy, and he didn't play in New York, and he didn't, his hat didn't fall off, and he didn't have the basket catch and do all the showboating stuff, But as far as a consummate everyday big leaguer, every one of his teammates said you had to see him every day to realize how great he was. And greatness to me is consistency. And that's what he was. Consistent. There he is with his mom and dad, who were, look at, I always say when Hank smiled, he'd light up a whole room. If you tell him a joke in the locker room and he'd smile, the whole place lit up. Because he had a serious look a lot of times, but there was nothing better when he smiled.
Yeah, the celebration itself, and this is the 7-13, 7-14 home run where they stopped the game at the end of it, and they obviously did 7-15 as well. there in Atlanta. But the cover of Sports Illustrated, just that moment there where Tom House gets to hand him the ball. Buckner wanted it. I know he wanted very badly, and Tom said, "You're not getting it. I'm not giving it to you." He wanted to give it back, to make sure Hank got it. Both of them
Of
did.
course.
And you know,
I mean, think about it. Tom House is part of history. You know what I mean? For catching the
yeah,
ball.
yeah, yeah. Could have been anybody else, right?
Yeah.
Or he could have hit it up into the stands. Not easy to do. And that's one of the things about Hank that if I were going to be critical of him, yeah, he had 755 home runs, and most of them were just barely a foot or two, or a yard or so past the fence line. He didn't hit towering shots, although he was capable of doing that a lot. And Darrell will obviously point that out. There's so many
Harper,
things that
Hank was 175, 180 pounds soaking wet. He had wrists. He wristed those balls, probably the greatest wrists in baseball history. He was a wrist hitter. And you combine, he didn't have a lot. This is like Mookie Betts is a skinny little guy. I never met him, but everybody tells me if you see him, when you meet him, you're going to be shocked at how small he is. He doesn't have home run power, but he had quickness. He did. He's not lately, but Hank had that wrist action, man, just amazing wrist action.
Yeah, that's the thing. His strength, his forearms, of course, and hey, I don't care if the fence was 455. He still hit all the home runs that he hit. And no, he didn't hit McGuire type home runs over the second tier. Didn't matter. But once he breaks the record, and here's the part. I was probably 74. I was 13 years old, maybe 11, somewhere in that range. I didn't realize that he was old. And It wasn't soon after that he ends up getting to, the end of his career, at least the end of the time that he had in Atlanta. He goes back to Milwaukee. Talk a little bit about, just the last days there in Atlanta and finishing that out.
Well, I'm like a baseball. I don't think the Braves should have ever traded him to the Brewers. That's just my opinion, because I thought he always will be a Brave, despite those 2 years in Milwaukee, which I'm glad he had, because he added a few more home runs on. And, but he was, in my mind, always a Brave and always will be a Brave. And, he just lit up the whole world. And Darrell can tell you so many stories that he's told me over the years about him, which were, unbelievable, because he was very, very close to him and around him all the time. And Hank took a special, I think Hank loved, he kind of took care of Dusty Baker and Ralph Gard, because, them being not knowing Atlanta and everything, he showed them around and everything. But he also took a liking. There's Billy, his wife there. What a sweetheart she was, and what a great wife she was to Hank. I think that was the finishing touches on Hank's life was Billy, because she really gave him, what he was. She gave him, Hank was the most, as I've always said, consistent player ever in the history of baseball, and she was a consistent wife. And that's what he needed in his life. A wife that was a wife like he was a player, and that's what she gave him. God bless her. She's still kicking too. Still in Atlanta.
Well, we mentioned the Brewers, and he gets traded there. The last couple of years that he's in Milwaukee, his numbers are obviously declining. But I think baseball and the Brewers, we're going to honor him and give him an opportunity just to finish out under his terms. Is there some fairness in that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I don't know why he couldn't have done it in Atlanta. But that's just me. But Atlanta, really was never a baseball town, as Darrell alluded to. They never really, I think, appreciated him like he should have been. If he'd have been playing in L.A. or New York or Chicago, he would have been like, there'd been a bridge named after him.
Yeah. So, Darrell, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me
now? You sure can. Go ahead, Darrell.
Can you see me?
No, I can't see you yet, but we're working on the camera angle real quick.
Okay. So, well, I think I was in the middle of telling about 74 and getting there. What happened in 73. Of course, he hit the 713, the next to last day in 73. But that wasn't, yeah, of course, we all were loving it. We were all enjoying it and everything else. But like I said, Davey and I had never have gotten to heights we'd never been before. I was young. I was still just starting out, and Davey was a veteran, but all of a sudden he ends up with 43 home runs. He got to 40 with, I don't know, 10 days to go or whatever. Nobody knew. Yeah, they do. They kind of knew. But then, and then I was getting, mid 30s, and I was like, oh man, this is, and nobody knew. I mean, they knew, but they didn't say anything about it. They were a little more just like we all were, what numbers Hank at. So then the press, I don't even remember who said it, was, you know what? There's never been three guys on the same team, three teammates that ever hit 40 home runs in the same year before. I was like, oh, really? Oh, we didn't know that. We were baseball historians, students, and all that. I didn't know that. I mean, that's not something that comes up very often, obviously. And so it was like, oh, that's all well and good and everything. And then, but then it was like, well, who's not holding up their end? Hank. Unless Hanks gets to 40, which nobody cared about how many he hit. I mean, they did, which is, I just heard you before I came on here. You were talking about how he kind of slowed down. Remember, he was 39 or 38 or 38 years old when he hit 40. So he wasn't really slowing down. I mean, that's some guys do, some guys don't. So, and so it wasn't about the home runs he was hitting. It was about him being in between Dusty and I. That was a pretty good, cool thing for us. We understood that too. So Davey and I and Dusty and whoever, Ralph Garr and all, was like, oh man, you guys, it's like, oh shit, you're gonna be in the Hall of Fame, Hank. What frig? All you gotta do is hit one more home run, and you put us. We'll do something nobody has ever done. Let's go, old man. Because we used to call him Soup for short for superstar, which he didn't like, of course, because, but that's why we called him that. But we loved him, and it was always, but that was in the confines, and it'd slip out once in a while. But it was so cool. It was like, and he'd go, "Wow, if I could do it every time, I'd already." Yeah, I know, no. We just, well, of course, we're kidding him, But it was so exciting for Davey and I, and I think the Braves fan and the people, and it was like, oh, so they're going to do something that's never happened either. How cool is that? Oh, that's right. And he's at seven. So when he hit his 40th, it was 713. And I was like,
Wow.
yeah, we were going crazy. He was going crazy. It's like they portray him as, he's just stoic kind of guy. And he didn't, hell yes, he was enjoying it. And because he was having that other crap that was going on all the time about black this, black that, and civil rights and all that shit. He didn't play that. He didn't want it. Didn't want that. But they did it because in Atlanta and I was in the South or whatever. And the people that we never saw showed up for those games. We never saw them again afterwards either. But they came to recruit Hank for, yeah, look at what happened here. This is what's happening. And it's like I said, if you didn't stay in Atlanta, go outside where we had houses and we in the community and stuff. If you came into town, it was like, oh, what's it like? Oh, wow, look at, we've heard all about it. Yeah, it's just like that way. So it was a way of getting him, and he wanted to get it over with. Which, like I said, what a shame he didn't get to enjoy it like he should have. It was like you, Bob, and everybody, Harper, it was the most important moment in the world because it was something that never happened before. It was Babe, the icon of ever. Nobody ever thought it was going to be, and nobody ever thought it was going to be Hank Aaron. But because it was in Atlanta, nobody cared. I mean, the people in Atlanta, yeah, I guess they cared, but they didn't come out and support him until then. And then all the other people, the celebrities, all jumped on the wagon like we see now. Yeah, so that's cool. It's cool to get front row seats. But how about coming to the game yesterday or the game before? or maybe are you a fan, or are you just there to be seen? So, um, but we got a chance to make him relax maybe a little bit, kid him and go, come on, old man, let's go, and so he hits home run. Now there's 500 press. I mean, you can't even, Fulton County State was great because they had big rooms. So, they could go over and kind of not disturb the players and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Hank didn't want that. So they go in these big rooms or whatever. Now there's like 500 press, 1,000 people that, asking questions going, I don't know anything about baseball, but what's an RBI? And so, just anyway, so he hits home run. Everybody's going crazy. Everybody knows, oh my God, the season's almost over. And I was like, my first thought was, he's going to make him wait until next year. And he did.
Yep, exactly what
We had a
happened.
couple days left, and it was like, now you got to wait on me. And what? Not being mean or anything like that, but the way they kind of just discovered him and all that. So after he hits home run, he's in there for an hour or whatever. But before he went into the press conference, he came up to me, and I'm sure he did to Davey too. Came up to me and he goes, "Hey, listen, D, man, I want you in the press conference." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, because we just did something nobody's ever done before." Oh my God, this is your idol. The God is going, come on, man, I want to enjoy it with you. So he took Davey and I into the press conference, and nobody, they kind of shout question, but he had already had him, like the press conference, presidential press. Shut up, I'm talking. So so he shut up and he goes, I am so proud. You notice that I brought in my two buddies and teammates here and stuff. We did. I'm so proud of what we did together and all this kind of stuff. And he talked about it for a few minutes or a few, 30 seconds or whatever. And he goes, that's what I want to talk about. Well, of course, when he stopped talking, all the questions were, where are you going to hit it tomorrow? Are you going to do all this kind of stuff? And he didn't. He was trying to be happy without having to already break the record. He knew it was going to come. He knew he was on the right track. And look at this wonderful thing he got to share with his teammates and all that kind of stuff. So yelling, screaming, oh, and what about all that? And then he put his hands up and he goes, listen, I told you I wanted to talk about this, and I'm very proud of what we happened. And we walked out. Oh my God! I mean, that's something I'll never forget, and something that, of course, Hank would do something like that. But it just told everybody how much it meant to him and what what we meant to him, I guess.
And he got to
And
enjoy the moment, didn't he, Darrell? He just, I'm controlling this. It's not controlling me. Is there fairness in the way I'm
yes,
saying that?
exactly, because he couldn't control any of the other stuff. That's why he talks about, he talked about this day. I just want to get it over with, just because all the, they were putting the pressure on him as being, wasn't just a ball player, the greatest player of all time, breaking the biggest record of all time. No, he had to be, they wanted him to be the leader of the civil rights and remind people of all the, and he didn't play that game. His teammates were so precious to him. That's anyway. So, and that's how you teach other people how to act.
Yeah.
And he's
Plus, the
always been
hey,
that standard
try
there.
hitting a round ball with a round bat for 385 feet or whatever it is that
Well,
you hit it.
you like you
I
said,
can't
we're
just
amazed. Yeah, we're amazed.
I can't
But you have
I
to hit a
can't just
ball.
turn it on.
Yeah, you guys
Go ahead
can't
there.
see me, but not only that, you have to hit on the bat. You have to hit it. There's a sweet spot that's, I don't know, 6 inches long maybe, and an inch wide. If you hit on a bat any place else, it's just luck if it's a hit. But
Yeah.
if you hit it on that sweet spot, and you have to time it right and hit it in front of you a little bit, uh, you wouldn't even try to do it. But because when we're young and we kind of have success, it's great. My oldest son Derek, he just sent me a picture of my grandson, who's 5 years old, in the batting cages, hitting on his own already. And he's
Yeah.
got a big ball and a big bat and all that kind of stuff. And it was I saw it this morning, and it was so cool because he's already learned where to hit it in front and and hit it and pull it because he can hit it harder that way. Nobody taught him anything. He just did it. So, yeah, we if we thought about it, uh, well, you can't think it's a reaction. It's not a reaction. Sorry, it's a proactive thing. We do it enough to figure out and go. The hard part about doing it is timing it right. Remember, it's not like a golf ball sitting on the ground where you can if you swing right the right way, you're going to hit it right. There we go. Yeah, and baseball, no. And then you have to go. So and then you have to hit it where the greatest defensive people in the world are trying to catch it. So that's why Eddie and Hank were going, shoot, the only way I can assure that I'm going to get a hit is to hit it over everybody's head. Like, oh, it's that simple. Yeah, hit it. Okay. I told you last time was like, Eddie was like, hey, get out of the way. Don't let them hit you. You might get hurt. There's nothing you can do about it. Get out of the way. Well, how do I stop them throwing at me? Hit a ball at the ballpark next time. And it's like, oh, really that easy? Well, no. But see, to them, it's not over. You don't have to overcome anything. You're already capable of doing it. And you just need somebody to go, come on, man, we think you can do it like Eddie and Hank the Hammer said to David Johnson. Hey, this is how we do it over here. So, it becomes this sense of pride, obviously, and then you get to be around. It's like going to the best school ever. It's like going to the best teacher ever. And I had my idol, one of the best ever. I had Hank there. When I first came up with the Braves, with Lando Cepeda, White Willem was on our team, Phil Negro was on, all for Hall of Famers. I got thrown into that thing and going, and they never went, it's really hard to do this. It's like, and we took batting practice different. Didn't waste any swings to loosen up and hit it here, hit it there. Well, it's only coming, you know, 30 miles slower than it is during the game. Why would we practice that? So, why would we practice that? Why would we practice trying to hit balls down and away? We can't hit them very good. No, you keep, okay, hey, if you throw three in a row, they're good. You better not miss. And we talk about, like I said, we talk about inches. This is the microscope, half inches, hundredth of an inch. When a guy hits a pop up, oh, it popped another one up. Well, when you're a hitting coach or when you're another player, you're going, ooh, because it just missed it by a hundredth of an inch. But the fans and everybody else, hey, hit it on the ground. And, it's like, well, I always used to remember too that they don't say nothing when you hit it good. Oh, everybody's an expert when they all got the answer. So I was
Hey,
around
hey
this
Darrell,
guy.
real quick, when you go back to the begin, what was the off season like going into spring training? Was there anything that was discussed other than Hank and the first game that he gets the home run, he's going to break the record? What
Of
did you
course
remember
not. But
anything specifically? Yeah.
well, no, yeah, well, of course. But see, I didn't. Yeah, I just moved to Atlanta. Bought a house there. I think that year or either 70. Yeah, I think so. So I was still new to spring training and like that and all that kind of stuff. But what I tell you all the time too is like we didn't have cell phones. We had to call people on a pay phone and hoped they answered the phone to tell all the people. So all we got the information was from the press, and that's kind of it. And so it was like, and you know what? To be honest, I look back and I go, well, a lot of them weren't that excited because it wasn't their guy doing it,
Yeah.
or nobody's better than Babe Ruth, so they're not allowed to break his record. Yeah, there was a lot of that. But you overlook it and stuff because when you walk into that, when you walk into that clubhouse, everybody's fired up, everybody's on all, and it's all about winning. And you're going, oh well, let's see, let's look down these lockers. Oh, this guy's he's going to hit 40 home runs, he's going to drive in 100 runs, he's going to score 100 runs, he's going to intimidate everybody, he's going to make me better because he hits behind me. I'm going to score more runs because he hits behind me. Dusty's going to be better because Dusty's going to have more guy than Davey hitting behind him. He's going to have him and me on base all the time. We got a chance to win more games. So yeah, maybe because I was young, I didn't notice. But now I think about there was negativity. Oh my God, and we're like, what would you pay to do that? To sit there for one game? And we're like Bob to be his friend and all that kind of stuff. So he didn't just bring along the other players. He brought along He brought along all of baseball, and that's something that he never gets credit for. So when he went through that, yeah, and so spring training, of course, it was more exciting than any time ever. Still is my number one thing. Although going to a different team when I went to the Tigers and I was a free agent, they wanted me, so that was I wasn't apprehensive. I was excited as could be, but you're still thinking, I'm like, oh man, I got to do good, and I'm going to fit in, and all these. But with Hank, it was just the opposite. Are we gonna help Hank? Are we gonna? I got to be really good. I got to help Hank. That's why, I'm proud of. I was on base for 700, 710, 711, 712, 713, 714, and 715. I was in a streak. But I
Yeah.
wasn't in home run streak. I was an on base streak. I walked, got on base because that was my job, because that made us win. So, he was always that guy where you can feel and go, can I hold your hand for a little bit, Hank, and follow along with you? When you think things are going against you, because it seemed like, and that's another thing, it seemed like he never made any mistakes. That's how we get judged. You know that. And that's how we get judged. At that level, it's all about who makes the least mistakes.
Hey,
Give
Darrell.
another team a chance. But
Darrell, would
we,
you repeat that one more time about on base for the seven and say it slower? I want to digest this. You're on base for 700.
700,
Yep.
710,
Yep.
711,
Wow.
712, 713, 714, and 750. Now, I didn't
Now
even
that
realize that till
is
later on.
unbelievable. That is they should put you in Cooperstown just for being on that
Well,
thing. Unbelievable.
I mean, it goes back to that, and I was, and of course I had a great year. I was feeling, I was playing really good and all that kind of stuff. And and I was very confident, and I knew how it worked. And they told me, I could see, okay, the pitchers, hey man, why would they walk me to pitch to Hank? They didn't walk me on purpose to pitch to Hank. They walked me because I wasn't swinging bad pitches, and they knew they had to throw it over the plate, and they were leery of that too. So it was. Oh my God, you're right. Going back and going, I was on, yeah. So I had that. One of my buddies gave me that picture right there, but it's blown up to 3 by 3 or whatever more. And I got it on my wall, of course, and it's
You're just
glossy and it's
barely in the right hand corner, aren't you, Darrell? You're in the right hand
yeah,
corner of this picture. Yeah, that's you.
yeah, yeah, and that unique view almost never see that. When you watch the games on TV, the cameras are always out front. To have that somebody Well, it was a photographer taking that picture, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
There's
to
one here
have
too. I
that
love this
kind of,
one.
yeah,
Now you
how
can't
many
see
things
you
were
in this, so
going
it's
on
not
at
as good. But I just love this picture. This is just, iconic, and a telephoto lens, obviously, that gets us the ball's just basically he started his swing. He's out of his load and ready to make contact. But the next one there, obviously, this one where he's already made contact. What a
I got to
great
see
moment.
that about, I don't know, 400, 400 times.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so you're standing on for. Wait, do me a favor. Take me back to the beginning of the ball game. You had mentioned on numerous occasions that um, the attendance in Atlanta isn't like where it is in other places. You probably had a hard time getting your car in the parking lot that day, right on April 8th.
Well, you know what we all, well, no, because yeah, that's funny you say that. Of course, it should have been that way. But, we go there early. And in Fulton County Stadium, they allowed us to park underneath because it was a long way to walk from the parking lot, a half a mile almost to the locker rooms and stuff. The Falcons were on one end and we were on the other. Yeah. So no, yeah, but that you're right. That was to think about that. It was like, yeah, when I went into the park, I don't know, 2 o'clock or whatever you would normally do, it's like it was crowded. There was traffic. There was people around, and of course, there was all kinds of TV trucks and all that kind of stuff. But there wasn't that many as now, of course. But and it was like it was like I don't know. It was going like going to the best concert, and you don't know if it's going to happen or not. But you're
Right.
going, man, what can I do to help make this happen? So I, people would ask or the press, and because what do you think? And it's like, well, watch. That's how we learn. How we watch, and that's I think looking back, is this was the most consistent player that ever played the game.
Yep.
But I mean, what I mean, there was never. Now, of course, there was some criticism, I guess, but there was never any criticism that should have been at all. I don't like I said before. It was like, so when you get to the ballpark, I'm going to the. Oh my God, tomorrow might be the time. Yeah, and if he hits, oh, and then the year before it's like, yeah, if he hits his 40th home run, we get to be in the Hall of Fame or whatever. We get to be known, Davey and I, and so every day was like that. And then, like you said, when he got to, but that was see 74 was different from 73 because all of a sudden 74, all the talk of the winter and all that kind of stuff, Bowie Kuhn was going, well, I don't know, I might put an asterisk on this. That is like, commissioners aren't very smart. Really? You think anybody believed wanted to do that to seeing a moment in history forever? Like I guess you couldn't do that to Cal Ripken's record because all those games played. Well, he played more games. No kid. People talk about that all the time. Well, you played so many games. Well, they played so many games. Well, no kidding. There's a reason why. Because you're the best, and they want you. Yeah, they're happy for you to play even more. And there wasn't any talk about him getting old or what. Yeah, like you, I know everybody talks about. It's like, well, yeah, in baseball, especially after 30, well, you're good. They're going to go down. Well, there's so many examples of that not happening, but people still think that, I guess. And yet, it was a privilege to go watch him play. So we knew that. Look at those film. Look at that picture with the banners in the back. That wasn't a World Series.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was. You treated it like it though. It was like a playoff game.
Yeah, that I guess that's what you wanted me. That's what I thought. It was like I'd never been. I'd been to the playoffs in my first year. I didn't. I sat on the bench. I was a rookie, and I didn't play. And we lost to the Miracle Mets in 3-game sweep. But Hank hit a home run in each game. So you've seen it. But anyway, so this was as close as and it was just stand up. You want to sit out in the dugout all the time. You don't want to be in the clubhouse. You want to sit out in the dugout so you see the fans and you can see people going crazy and all that kind of stuff, and just build up, and couldn't wait for when he walked out on the field and people went crazy. So that was, you don't want to miss anything like that. And look at that picture. So Al Downing was. Did you throw it over on purpose? Did you let him hit it? What the hell? The people. That's for the fans. Are like, have you ever seen guys take batting practice? They don't hit every ball or bar, even though they know it's coming. It's not slow. So it's always, isn't it? Trying to find something wrong with something that you can't find something wrong about.
Yep.
And that was part of it. So, yeah, look at that. Look, Al Down, is he screaming at him? He's going to throw a ball? No. He always talks about, say, hey, man, I try to get him out. He always said, I wasn't the only guy I hit a home run off.
Yeah.
Now, 750 or whatever more other guys.
Yeah, this picture here also has the two kids that ended up meeting him halfway between second and third.
Yes,
You see them in the background. Yeah.
I'm amazed Calvin Wardle didn't shoot him.
Well, but see, he wasn't. No, but he was taking care of it. Well, I guess you're right, because he sat in the dugout.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and sometimes he wasn't. I don't know. He's patrolling. Yeah, you're right. And that's a great point, Bob.
Hey, you don't want to know something.
How come nobody? If it was so serious and all that, how come nobody shot him? How come there wasn't snipers? How come there wasn't, like they do now? They put the horses around, or they're relying it. Didn't do it for him. That will never go away, and that's
what I love to tell people, Darrell. Whenever somebody, these younger people, of course, that never saw Hank, whenever there's one thing I found that shuts up everybody. If anybody ever mentions Barry Bonds to me, I have one thing. There's Darrell right there. Congratulate me. But if anybody ever mentions Barry Bonds to me, you know what I say? I say, and this shuts them up. I say, imagine Hank Aaron on steroids.
Well, yeah, but you're right, Bob. But it's always, you got to find something negative about what's happening. I think it wasn't it. I think the same. So when Babe Ruth retired, I don't remember what year that was, but I think it was the same amount of time between Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's record as it was for Barry passing Hank. Same amount of years. Now, I read that sometime and I haven't followed up on it, but it's real close to that. So even better, doesn't come along very often. It's something impossible. And if you played sports at all, oh my God, 755 times. To break it down, it's like, I always talk about this. We play 6 months, basically, more than. We play 100. We play 162 games in 181 days. We're not practicing every day. We're not practicing 2 times a week. We're playing. We're performing. What a great picture that is. Huh? Oh man, how proud, how awesome. That makes it even better that they got to enjoy it too, of course. But we play 162 games in 181 days. And kind of part of this is in April when the weather might not be good, so they give you off days, and you don't get any, 2 or 3 off days the whole 3 or 4 months in the summer. But you're flying either to a city or coming home, so you're not. And then September and October they get more off days because they might get rained out and they don't have time. So, and having that, how it worked out, where he hit the home run in Cincinnati, And then we happened to be at home for, I think, like a 10-day, 9 or 10 day homestand. So his best buddy, his partner, that these two hit more home runs than anybody in the history of baseball ever will, and they did it more than Gehrig and Ruth, by the way. His buddy was the manager and said, "Hey, listen, let's we want you to I want you to do it at home." Bowie Kuhn called up Eddie Matthews and go, back then nobody knew what the lineups were until you got to the ballpark. Now it's the press, you got to tell them and all that. It's like, well, what the hell? It's none of their business anyway. But Eddie was trying to make it so that he would. I mean, if he'd have broke that record in Cincinnati, would have been anything close to this? No. So Eddie was trying to take care of him, and the odds are he was going to hit one or two more on a 9-game homestand, because if you go back, you played 24 weeks, 6 months, you played 24 weeks. And like, hey, if you hit one home run a week, it's 24 home runs. And back then you were a real stud. Even now you're still a stud, but nobody pays attention much to that. But Hank just hit 2 a week for 24 years. So, it's like, to be even part of that, to be talking about, to be, oh man, those great pictures. Look at those pictures. And you don't see him, I guess. You see him and he's smiling all the time, isn't he?
Yep.
But I don't think he's perceived that way, is he? Harper, is he kind of perceived as being a happy guy, smiling all the time?
Well, once he did it, yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit earlier while we were having some technical problems about the amount of pressure and everything that was on him. And once he was able to relieve that, and you mentioned that during the press conference, when you get a chance to control the situation rather than letting it control you, just a completely different vibe. And then obviously, the pictures that we've shown here, the baseball cards, the cover of Sports Illustrated, everything that was a part of it, just the joy of being able to do something as magnificent as he did. Um, an amazing feat in baseball.
Well, and I think one of the things too was it wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't just all of a sudden something happened and threw a perfect game, or no, this was a career like no one else ever had. And I used to kid him all, went to see him and all that time. And people would always, it was kind of fun because, and then people realized, oh, you were okay. Well, how was it? What was was he the best player you ever? I don't know, like what? You had to ask me that. He holds every record, almost virtually, first or second in everything. Better than anybody else. But I used to kid him, as we went along. After I saw him later on and all that kind of stuff, we in the old timers games and ran into him and all that kind of stuff. And who better to reminisce about what was going on when you couldn't really? It was happening so fast. You couldn't ask the questions. You were before you could talk to him anytime you wanted to, or yelling at him across the locker room and stuff. But then all of a sudden, he's like, "Hey, the press, hey, can you get out of the way, please?" Oh yeah, yeah, no, get the frick out of the way. We're trying to win a ballgame. And, so then when I saw him later on a lot, I got to sit with him. I don't know if you got that picture of me in between him and Eddie at an old timers game. I think it was here in Texas. But anyway, and we were laughing. And it was like, wow, yeah, because I was one of the guys. I was one of their buddies. I was there. I was intimately involved. I did my thing. But man, to be seeing that. So after like I said, I saw him later and all that kind of stuff. Used to kid him and stuff. Was like, did you, did you, did you plan on hitting 713 and then make everybody wait? And he try not to smile, but of course, and it's like, well, best laid plans usually, don't work out all the time, but this time they did, and and he got, and so after not getting, yeah, they got the recognition, but not as much as he should have enjoyed it and all that kind of stuff. Not everybody was on his side. And then when Barry passed him, he finally got some of the recognition, even from the people who've never seen him. It's like, oh no, it wasn't Babe Ruth. But I used to kid him, and people would ask me, well, who's better, and him or Babe Ruth? And I was like, um, well, Babe Ruth, because he pitched too. It's like, oh, and most people don't even know Babe Ruth pitched. But now it's like, oh wow, this guy that's doing it now, he's just as good or better because he does them both at the same time. Yeah, well, yeah, two Tommy John operation. How many home runs does he have? He's only got to go, I don't know, another 400 home runs. But but I got to be part of that when it was happening, and so I used to kid him all the time, go, yeah, hey, you're not that good. Babe won. I don't know what he won. How many games did he win, Bob? But, he's a 20-game winner a couple of times.
Yeah, he was. Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, he holds I think he still holds the record, best ERA ever in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
But he quit because he wanted to concentrate on hitting. So it's like, okay, well, could you have done that, Hank? Hell no. Oh, so he played the outfield his whole basic career. Right. Well, I think it was 73. Was we had, Dusty and Ralph Garr were in the outfield, and then up and coming big stars and all that kind of stuff. And then Mike Lum was another great player. And all three of those are fast, great outfielders and all that kind of stuff. And Hank was still really good. But Eddie, it was Eddie, I think. Eddie got the idea, well, let's see. We can't, there's no DH, so how are we going to get all these guys in line? It's like, well, we'll put to keep our defense and all that kind of stuff better. And they're young and everything else, and we'll put him at first base, Hank at first, so we won't have to, he won't have to run around so much. Which is crazy. That's not true. Playing first base, you're involved in every anyway. And so Eddie got that idea thinking spring training. So we go to, I don't know, we play in our second or third game in spring training, and Hank's playing first. Well, it's not easy if you've played the outfield and never played the infield. It's much harder than it is to go from the infield to the outfield. Because you catch ground balls, you're all that. But when you're an outfielder standing around all the time, and then you got to go do something, and you got to be involved in your footwork and all that. Of course, it's new every. Well, like the second day, he puts Hank over there in spring training, and he kind of hadn't really, he'd taken ground balls and all that, but he, whatever. So I think it was the second hitter hit a two-hopper to me. I was playing third. Hit a two-hopper to me, just a routine ball. I hit it fairly decent, so I had a lot of time to throw it over there. Well, I got it, and I didn't let it loose, but I threw it pretty good. And Hank stretched. Well, you guys can't see it on TV, but he stretched, put his hand out to catch the ball, and it went in between. He didn't even get leather on it. It went in between his glove and his ear by him and went. And Hank just turned around and started chasing, like, oh, okay. And oh my God, it was like afterwards, like we could have killed him. It was so funny to do that, but he wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to do this anymore. He was like, oh, hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, because the infielders throw the ball, and sometimes they cut, sometimes they whatever. So you got to get used to that kind of stuff. So it was really cool that he sacrificed for the team, never bitched about, no, I'm the right fielder. No, you put those other guys in. So that was another.
Well, after 23
thing.
years,
and I think
Hank
because
had an amazing career, Darrell. Real quick, and if we're going to wrap it up here with so many different things that he was able to accomplish, whether it be in the outfield, first base, obviously at the plate. Bob, before we go, Cooperstown, let's talk a little bit about that. The induction into the Hall of Fame. I got one picture here of him. The legacy speaks for itself. There's so many different things that he did 25 times he was an All-Star. He won a World Series. That's one thing we didn't really discuss much with the 57 Brewers. He was an MVP in 57. He's won Gold Gloves. He was a batting champion. He was a home run leader during most of his career. He was an RBI leader for most of his career. He ends with 2,293 career runs batted in, 6,856 career total bases, 1,477 career extra bases, and obviously the things that matter the most: a 305 lifetime batting average, which again speaks phenomenally of his ability to get on base, 3,771 hits, 755 home runs, 2,297 runs batted in. He received 97.8% of the votes in his first ballot. Bob, who voted against him and why?
We need to know that.
I have, that's why I say I give the Hall of Fame zero credibility. Do you think Hank Aaron needed the Hall of Fame to validate him? And if there's three people that voted against him, that's why there's certain people like Maury Wills and people that are not in the Hall of Fame, and Darrell there's other people that are in the Hall of Fame I'm not going to name that should not be in the Hall of Fame. So it's really lost. I've always said, do you think I look at Hank Aaron, Darrell Evans any differently whether they're in the Hall of Fame or not as a ball player? No, because they're in the Hall of Fame in my mind. I don't need some reporter that never played high school ping pong to tell me who were great ball players who weren't even alive when these guys were playing. Most of these guys are computer geeks that don't know shit about the game of baseball that vote for these players. And I've seen a lot of political stuff going too, where guys were on the voting committee of the veterans and they didn't let Gil Hodges in because who was on the committee with them? So I forget, but he held Earl Weaver was on the committee and he kept one guy out of the Hall of Fame because of the shoe polish incident in the World Series, blah, blah, blah. But it goes on and on. So it's really not about fairness. Fairness is Hank Aaron. All you got to do is say Hank Aaron. You don't need to say Hall of Fame after his name. That's almost demeans him to say Hall of Fame. Hank Aaron alone says everything. I don't need to hear, oh, he's in Cooperstown. No. So is a lot of other tomato cans. Hank Aaron alone is the greatest player. And how about all this stuff? He's still number one in RBIs in the history of baseball. Still number one with no steroids, no bullshit, none of this other crap going on. So he'll always be number one to me. And the fact that Darrell, you just showed a picture of Frank Robinson and Hank Aaron going in the Hall of Fame together, two great players. And Frank was Darrell's manager with the Giants. So Darrell's connected to all these people. So anyway, it's been great to see you guys, and it's great memories remembering Hank and Darrell and all the great things that there's nothing better than the past to me, bringing up the past, because, that was in my feelings, the greatest era in baseball history. So, and I'm privileged to have watched it and still have it in my mind and be able to talk about it with you guys. And it brings it all back. Seeing all those great pictures, Harper, were terrific. Anyway, thank you for having us. And Darrell, thank you for your great, how great is that to get input from his main, one of his main.
Those two guys on film are right there in the picture. Yeah. I had a couple little with Frank. Frank was so good, but he's not in that conversation, is he?
Nope.
Kind of the best, even the best right fielder all the time, because, you go Hank and Babe. There's not too many other guys that fit in there, but look at how great he was. Yeah. Let me, it's so fun to talk about that. But it's great, my life right now, dude, to have to search back or to remember that, and it's funny how
there is on a postage stamp, Darrell.
Yeah, how many? If you got stamped, you're probably in a league of your own, wouldn't you say?
Probably, Bob? You think?
Yeah. Darrell, real quick, final thoughts from you. Obviously, as a teammate and a friend, a guy that you could call up at any time and him call you just to say hello and see how things were going, but also as one of the baseball greats. Really quick, wrap that up.
Well, it was such a privilege to be around all those guys and to do what I was, I guess, made to do, brought up to do, and dreamt a little bit about, but then got to achieve that. And then you go to, and where else do you go to see the absolute best at what they do? There's no arguing that. The Hall of Fame, three guys didn't vote for, what the hell's wrong with you? But you and what's great about baseball, it's every day. I know you guys once a week, or and you got practices, but it's not the same. So it's putting yourself on the line and seeing, and you know what, and he was too smooth, wasn't he, Bob? I
Yep.
mean, the people hadn't seen him. He just, we say that to, I guess, a lot of people, but he made it look easy.
That's absolutely.
He
That's what I
wasn't.
said.
Wasn't he? He wasn't 6'9" and a monster, but he was really big. If that's what we get all the time. With people just go, "Wow, you guys are a lot bigger than me, or than we thought you were." Yeah, well, you've seen us a little tiny, 1 inch on the TV screen, but yeah, we had to compete with these monsters and the greatest athletes in the world. And man, I got to watch him do everything.
Yep.
How to put your clothes on, how to act that way, because he was one of those class guys. He was a guy. Do I want to look like Hank Aaron? Yeah, yeah. Do I want to act like Hank Aaron? Yeah. And so that was even better than just you're sitting there in the dugout and you're or whatever, and you're going, oh my God, it's like front row seats.
Hey, Darrell, I got to hang with him in his pajamas.
Yeah, I don't know if that. Yeah, well, he's gone
That
now.
counts.
So
That counts. That counts. That's something different. Well, Darrell, we thank you so much for your insight. Bob, obviously a man who's met and dined and visited with and taken pictures with pajamas on. And for those of you that are watching, we got a chance to go over memory lane with one of the greats of all time. That's Hank Aaron. And so on Baseball Legends of the Past, that's what we're going to do. We appreciate your time. Thank you for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. You've been watching 100 Yards of Football in this show, which is really just a highlight of some of the greats. May it be Casey Stengel, Eddie Matthews, Hank Aaron, some of the others that we will be discussing here in the near future. We just want to say thank you for tuning in, everybody, and being a part of the show. Have a fantastic rest of your day. We certainly appreciate it.